Josh. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Melee. It's all sort of opinion and personal preference, whether you like it or not. I know in the games that we play, I don't think we've actually ever allowed Melee at all.
I'm trying to think. I don't think we have.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know, I just tend to not particularly like it. Every time I've played a game that has Melee in it, it doesn't feel like Melee combat. Like the way you would play Melee in a video game and things like that. It looks really cool that you've got swords, but it's always you get tagged by a sword, you're out. Or, whatever the Melee weapon is.
To kind of put this more into perspective, anyone who's actually gone to Nerf games, you notice that when Melee is allowed, let's say someone has a sword or a broadsword or whatever type of sword they want to use. Mm-hmm. When they're actually making contact with someone to get them out, what's happening is they're usually running with their arm extended, with the sword extended as forward as possible, and trying to tap them or poke them.
Yeah, and that's the problem. All I have to do is tap you, and it's a game of tag, which, we're basically doing with dart blasters anyway, but...
Yeah, it's range tag, basically.
Exactly.
We're using something to touch you, just with Melee, it's connected to you. And the big problem I have with that is it doesn't feel like Melee combat. Like, the difference between a sword, a mace... There is no difference when it comes to Nerf when you're doing Nerf wars because you're just looking to tap someone.
Yeah, so theoretically you should just get the longest thing that you can possible and just try to tap people with it.
What this will escalate to is jousting, I feel like.
There we go.
Which would be awesome. You get on a Segway and you just joust people with those giant pool noodles that are made out of like foamy material.
There you go.
That's foam combat, right?
That's a completely... See, but at that point it's a different sport.
Yes.
You're doing something completely different.
It's kind of like,
but it's still fun.
What it breaks down to is what kind of feel you want to go with your games, I feel.
I agree.
The big appeal with me with Nerf is it feels like you're using a blaster. It feels like you're using a ranged weapon. So, Melee is definitely a cool mix-up to that, involving that in combat, because in combat situations, having a knife or having something to hit someone close range with does make sense.
Right.
But when it's the primary means of making contact and getting someone out, then, you don't see people running around with an axe in Modern Warfare or any of the Call of Duty games.
Right.
You do in Team Fortress 2, though.
This is true. And that's not to say that it's bad, just that with the way that we generally do games, it doesn't tend to work well. At the same time, a lot of the games that we've played, and not all the games, sometimes we've done this and sometimes we haven't, but a lot of the games we're using stock darts. We don't have a ton of people that have come through with a lot of Steffens and homemade darts.
Stock elite darts, by the way, not the orange ones.
Well, we used the orange ones back when,
Back when they were the only things you could get, but now we've moved up to at least the elite series.
Yeah, but we're using either stock streamline darts, either elites or old school. And at that point, there's really not a whole lot of minimum engagement distances that you have to worry about. It's not like, I'm within the X number of feet, so I shouldn't shoot you. I should just call a hit, or I should do this, or I should do a barrel tap. We haven't had that problem. So I understand that people that are using much, much more higher powered blasters, and they've got washers or dome tips or slug, whatever they're using, you could potentially hurt someone. So there's an advantage to having a way of tagging someone out that's maybe not a barrel tap. Maybe it's cool to be able to be like, all right, well, I'm within X number of feet. I'm going to pull out my sword and tag you. But since we don't have that come up too often in games, we haven't really had that problem. I personally would rather just have if I were in a game like that, have a high-powered blaster and then have something that just shot stock darts. And if I got close up, just pull out, my Strife, for instance, and just wail on you with that. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, how often are you actually getting that close anyway?
Yeah, and that's where you get the whole weird kind of like, I'm pulling, like you can't see it right now because I'm sticking my arm out.
Right.
Just trying to reach as far as you can to tap someone or silently poking them.
Right.
It just doesn't lend itself too favorably to the style of combat that goes with a lot of ranged weapons. It makes more sense to have a low-powered ranged weapon that you can just use to hit someone at not exactly right next to him, but close enough.
Yeah. I know we'll probably get flack for that. I'm not saying that I hate Melee by any means, but more that I feel that if I want to do Melee, that we should just do Melee games. We should just everybody show up with like Nerf swords and Nerf maces and just do Melee games and have fun, and don't try to incorporate it into blasters, at least for the games that we play.
Yeah, it's very hard to integrate both styles into one setting realistically.
Right.
Because there's probably people out there who do like LARPing or what's it called, SCA?
SCA, they don't use foam.
But they use mock weapons basically to attack each other. And while you might see like LARPers or SCA kind of using certain weapons that say would be melee or ranged, it's generally low-tech stuff, so like a bow and arrow or something like that. Now with Nerf, because there's so many blasters that have pretty good ranges at this point, and if you're using homemades, great ranges, just the principle of like where would be the advantage with using melee weapons, which comes to usually people saying, well, they're instant kills. They get you out instantly. That's why a poke is only necessary. When realistically, if you're talking actual battles, poking someone with the tip of your sword wouldn't get them out. Getting shot with a bullet will knock you out. But tipping someone with the tip of your sword, unless there's poison at the tip.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different types of swords. There's different types of. I mean, if you're talking about fencing, you know what I mean. A tiny little pinprick can pretty much kill you. Mm-hmm. But then you look at, well, if I'm in combat, I might be wearing a bulletproof vest. You know, I might be wearing plates. There's just so many different things. And I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics of this melee and why this doesn't work. It's just, I think melee in general, at least for what we play, I would rather keep it separate as opposed to together. I just have too many. I think there's too many issues. Like I said, A, we don't have minimum engagement distance. B, there's a lot of different things, and there's no definitive rulings on anything. As far as people play Nerf, they play by whatever rules they want.
Of course.
But we haven't been able to come up with anything that really lends itself to being able to, I'm going to pull out a sword and I'm going to chop people and not be like, cool, that takes away the fact that if you're 10, 15 feet away from me and you shoot at me with a blaster, I might be able to dodge that. If I have the option to hit you with a sword, even if I'm out of ammo, I could dodge that, and I can close that gap within a few seconds and potentially get you out. And, I mean, you could do that with a blaster as well, but there's more of a dodging element, and I don't know.
I agree about that. The dodging element is definitely very big in Nerf. That's what's very fun about it. And
yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
If you can close that, I mean, that's definitely a different playstyle, though. If you're aggressive enough with a blaster and running close enough, odds are you're going to get people who are just going to back down because of that.
Yeah, I mean, we have people that come in that are just wicked fast and can, dodge like nobody's business, and they're running around not getting shot. And as it is, sometimes it's like, well, it's a good thing they have a blaster and we can dodge too, because if they had a melee weapon, we'd be screwed. It'd be like, well, I'm just gonna run around and dodge every single shot you take at me and poke you with the sword.
I'm not gonna lie, a couple of times I've done melee combat. I have thrown my melee weapon a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a mace I really like using. And I remember in one game, I saw someone, and they were running away because they were out of ammo, and I was chasing after them, and I was like, no, this is going to be more fun. And I took my hammer and was swinging it above my head like Thor, and I chucked it at him, and it was made of foam, so it didn't fly too far.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you're doing melee combat, make sure you have dwarves from, I don't know the name of the realm the dwarves are from. I know Midgar, Asgard, and Jotunheim. The dwarves are not from any of those, by the way. But what I'm saying is, you got to have magical space powers if you want to effectively be the best at melee combat in Nerf. Thor would wreck.
He would wreck. That is true.
So
and also fly around with his magical hammer.
And speak like Shakespeare in the Park.
That's also true. Yeah, I don't know. And then also there's the issue of weapon length and size. Like, I'm using a mace, and you're using a longsword, and then somebody else is using the tiny little like Nerf tomahawk.
It's not the size of the melee weapon, Josh.
It's
actually, now thinking about it realistically, the little tomahawk would probably throw a lot better than the other ones.
Honestly, it probably would, but I mean, my point is, like...
The point is, not everyone is as stupid as me and will throw a melee weapon. It's like, I only have one means to attack you, let's take it out of my hands!
Well, you just get people... And this is one of the things that we've tried to address in our games, is how are people going to try to break these rules, and what can we do to stop them from breaking them?
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things we spend most of our time on when we're coming up with rules and regulations, and saying, who's going to be the person who finds a way to abuse this ruling? Like, actually, we'll get into that later, but like that's why with a lot of the game types we have specific rules for them. With melee weapons, it's hard to find that good blend of what will work. If we had more game types that were probably melee only, they would probably work a lot better. Yeah,
because we'd have very specific rules for that, and there wouldn't be... So here's the thing. There's a couple of different things I want to address when it comes to melee. So one is just getting the biggest melee weapon that you can, and just being able to tag people from really far away. One of the others is, so I mean, you could actually just on that really quick, like, yeah, it's a dick thing to do, and people wouldn't do this probably, but somebody would, and then everybody would just look at this guy like, why are you doing this? But there's no rule against it. Like taping them together. Like, I'm just going to take 2 swords, I'm going to tape them together. Now I've got a longer sword. I'm going to tape another one onto it and just stab people like a giant
the quick solution to that is weapon hits count.
Okay.
So if they have a big target that's all duct taped together.
At the same time, they could just swing around like Link and just hit everybody.
Hey, Nintendo made it. He gets dizzy now. So there is that.
There you go.
He's like, oh, that was a bad idea. Why did I think spinning around really fast in the middle of combat would work?
So, I mean, there's that. There's also, people like to make bayonets.
Do they?
I've seen it before. I've seen a lot of people friggin' taping things onto their Nerf blasters. And when it's the little Nerf dagger, yeah, that's cool. It's actually like a bayonet, whatever. I mean, it means that if you're going to have barrel taps in your game, that's like, okay, that's an effective barrel tap. It makes sense. I don't have ammo, but I'm still able to stab you. Cool. I'm going to tape a Nerf mace to mine. Why? Again, it's a dick thing to do, but hey, I don't want to go spend a bunch of money on the Stonewall Sword and Shield, which has the dagger,
little dagger,
even though it's called the Sword and Shield, but they've got the little dagger. I was like, well, I don't want to buy that off eBay or whatever. I already have the long sword or the great sword or any of the other plethora of weapons. Well, do you just
a
tape
cornucopia of weapons?
Cornucopia of weapons of Nerf.
That's why you tape them all together.
But I mean, then do you start instituting minimum or maximum rather lengths of bayonets? You know, there's just so many variables that it's kind of like, well, what do you do with this? What do you do with that?
Some feedback I'd actually like to get on this for people listening is when you're running your games, how strict are you about melee rules? Like, do you have a certain regulation size? How do you handle certain, like, let's say weapons clash. I mean, obviously that makes sense that they wouldn't count, but would a gun hit against a weapon count?
That's the other thing I wanted to address is usually a lot of people play weapon hits count. Well, it's a weapon. If you shoot at, I'm dead. But if I hit your gun, you're dead. But if 2 swords hit each other, technically that's a weapon hit, and you guys should both be dead, but that sort of defeats the purpose of having the swords.
Yeah, because then it's not even like combat even.
Yeah, it's like, why would I want to have this if I can't get into an epic, oh, I'm going to hit you with, and we're going to block, and, well, weapon hits count, so you're dead. Well, what?
And I don't think anyone really plays it that way. I think in their head they're always just kind of like, oh, if you're hitting a sword against a sword or a weapon against a weapon,
right?
Yeah, it's they can deflect each other, and that's the other issue I have with melee. It gets very convoluted very quickly. Like a big subject that we haven't mentioned yet is shields. Yeah. Shields definitely are. You sound so happy when I bring them up. Shields. So shields, not to be confused with the Samuel L. Jackson.
Sean Connery.
Wouldn't Sean Connery have been really good as Nick Fury?
Yes, he would have been awesome as Nick Fury.
Would have been amazing.
Like old man Fury.
Avengers.
Assemble.
Assemble. So speaking of real shields, fake shields, I mean, not real shields made by dwarves.
I don't know. Some people might not have rules against using real shields or not.
I feel like we asked someone when we played a game, and we were like, can we bring our riot shield? And they're like, sure, I don't see why not. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Now, with shields, there's even more, like, sort of just different things you can get into as far as rules and gray areas.
Like, naturally, the first thing people always say with shield is like, oh, if a bullet hits a shield, it doesn't count as a hit.
Which makes sense. That's why you want the shield.
Yeah, same with a melee weapon. If a melee weapon hits a shield, it won't count as a hit. And I'm like, cool, that's why you'd use a shield.
Makes sense.
But the problem is, once again, talking about regulation size, how big are you willing to let a shield go?
Right? I mean, I'm a small dude. I'm like 5'2". I can get a shield that's literally almost as big as I am. Mm-hmm. And I can make a little peephole through the shield so I can look and just put my blaster around it and just fire, and I can crouch behind a shield, and like, what are you going to do? Not hit me? Ever? You have to run around behind me?
You know what it's like? Have you ever played Chrono Trigger?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're in the dungeon in the castle, when you're prosecuted for, I don't know, being a jerk, there's an enemy in one of the stairwells called the shields, the blue shields or whatever. It's these tiny little guys just behind the shield, and you attack them and it does nothing. You have to wait for them to kind of reveal themselves. You would be those.
Yeah, it'd be those little dudes in Mega Man that, like, hide underneath their hard hats.
The Mets.
Yeah, and then pop up and shoot 3 little bursts at you.
The Mets
my
pitcher.
But I mean
But that's the basic element, though. You have a really great way to blockade yourself from all damage.
And if you roll up, let's say you have some friends and you all get together and you're like, cool, we all have shields. Let's just 300 this thing. We're all just going to make a phalanx and put our blasters in here and just shoot at each other. What happens?
There's nothing stopping you from doing that, and I feel like probably a fortunate thing we have with our games is they're a decent size, but we have a lot of regulars that come. We know what to expect, kind of. Mm-hmm. With a lot of these internet games, NIC games, pickup games people are playing, there's no accounting for what you're going to see there, and that's what's really kind of tricky about Melee, because you could have a group of people literally do exactly what you just said.
Well, especially when you have games that are open to the public, and people might be used to playing one way, and you might be used to playing another way, and that's why with our games I like to have a very specific set of rules so that people that haven't come before, we can say, here, these are the rules, they're all here, any questions we already have a definitive answer for, not like, well, we usually do it like this, and everybody just sort of assumes that we're not going to do something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not that I would go and necessarily do that, but, you know, it could happen.
I think that's the difference between us and a lot of other people. I've gotten, at least with me, I've gotten to the assumption that if someone is new, I'm not going to treat them this way. I'm always excited and overjoyed to see new players coming to our games and very welcoming. I operate under the assumption that they're going to try and break the rules.
Yeah,
we'll not break the rules, but, you know, bend them, twist them to kind of manipulate them in a way that gives them an advantage.
Right. If you sort of have a contingency for people to try and break the rules, and you write the rules specifically thinking, how can someone break this, and let's make sure that they can't, then obviously you're not going to have that problem.
It's kind of like developing a video game. You have bug testers who go around trying to break the world.
Yeah.
It's not them being jerks, it's just saying, hey, we want to make sure that this has been thought out ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's what's tricky about Melee, because there's so many different ways fights can go down. It's hard to account for everything.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of this happened, that happened, he said, she said, and then you have, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a headache.
Yeah.
But back to shields, aside from just the size that people, I rarely ever see like, oh, you can only use shields of this size, or you can only use the Nerf brand shield, or you can only use this or that. I never see anybody usually say this is a specific size limit for shield. I mean, I haven't been to I haven't checked every game out there. People may have, but just generally when I've looked, whenever I see Melee saying that it's involved, sometimes I don't even see if shields are or aren't allowed. You know what I mean?
Because I'll hear talk about Melee games, and a couple of games will be outlined beforehand saying what we're planning on playing. Mm-hmm. But I never see regulations on size of weapons. It's operating on the assumption that people aren't going to be dicks.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language. I don't know if we've decided we can be adult on here or not.
I don't know yet either.
They're going to be Richards. They're going to be Reed Richards. Comic book day, everyone.
I mean, we don't want to drop any like huge bombs. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yes.
This is the internet. If you're listening to this and you're offended, don't listen to it, and I'm sorry.
We're sorry that we hurt your feelings. Please don't leave us. We love you very much.
Every person who listens to this is a valued treasure. Yeah, it's just a regulation thing, and because everybody has sort of different regulations, you don't know what to expect going in. So if I read it and it says Melee is allowed, cool. Well, I'm going to bring all my Melee stuff. It's just like when they say when people don't put real restrictions on blasters, most people that come to a game for the first time, or at least we've noticed this in our games, will bring all of their stuff. Like, I'm going to bring all my Nerf blasters and all my things because I don't know what I can and can't use.
And I do appreciate that because
and it makes sense.
Because very much so, a lot of people expect their blasters, if it's overpowered, very strong, they expect they aren't going to use it. So I appreciate that they're like, I brought backups in case you don't like this. And in general, we try and be very open, welcoming of different people's blasters because we understand you put a lot of hard work into them. Mm-hmm.
And with blasters, there's still almost only so much you can do. I mean, theoretically, you could do a lot of things. We've seen some weird stuff, but with combat, with melee combat and shields, it's like there's so much out there. You can I use this? Can I not use this? Is this too big? Is this too small? Do you put limits on it? Is it too thick? Is it too heavy? Is it,
There are a lot of regulations if you try and put regulations on it. I'm sure the mentality of a lot of players out there is it's very simple. Do I have an implement? Do I have a weapon, an implement of some sort that I can swing at you without actually hurting you, but making contact with you to get you out? Mm-hmm. Then that's all that matters.
Right.
Then it's not a difference between a shield, a mace, this, whatever. It's just a matter of, do you have something physical we can use?
Right.
And that's a very simplistic approach. I'm sure it works with a lot of games. The issue I take with shields a lot of time is just the fact that they are blocking blasters, which is, to me, Nerf is mainly about blasters.
Right. It's
That's
about
what the focus is on. You want to shoot
agree.
people. So when you have this weapon, this implement, that can completely nullify that element, and I'm sure people are thinking, well, you can shoot people in the foot. It's like, that works in real life, maybe? But with a Nerf blaster, A, it's hard to be that accurate. B, it's very hard to feel shots on the foot, especially if you're wearing boots or anything heavier.
Yeah, I wear combat boots.
Yeah, you're not gonna really feel that connect, and then it gets that situation like, I hit you. Did you? I don't know. It looks like you shot the floor. I didn't feel it.
I also have a shield.
Yes.
Like right now, I mean, we're pretty good about, I got hit, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah, honor system is always important, but like I said, in different people's games, it just seems like an area that is very welcoming to complications.
No, I agree, and especially with shields, just because shields, it's like, well, you might have thought you hit me, but I do have a shield. You might have missed. Mm-hmm. There's a very good chance you hit this shield, especially if it's one that's as big as I am.
And just complications of how to get rid of shields. Like, it seems like a lot of people play with the idea that if you have a heavy weapon, a heavy artillery you can use against it. Like, I've seen, like, sock grenades and, like, actual, like, Nerf footballs used
like
as
those
missiles.
vortex footballs.
Yeah, like, basically,
some
if
of the
that
large
makes contact
type, like
with
the
the
missiles
shield,
and stuff like that, right.
If that makes contact with the shield's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are always loopholes and manipulations you can use to get around that. Like, kind of like, oh, if the shield gets hit, it's gone, but I'm still in? Okay, I'll take the hit for my shield, and my shield will be fine.
Right.
And I'll still get to use it. If you're playing that the shield's out and broken for the entire game.
Right.
I mean, some people might play it that basically your shield's gone until respawn.
Right, or you die with the shield, and it's just a way to kill you if you have a shield. I mean, there's a lot of different, again, variations that you can play on that. And I agree. The shield breaking mechanic, sort of, is weird because, to me, you're sort of... We're not replicating actual combat with Nerf weapons, but it is sort of like these are Nerf darts instead of bullets, that we're using in blasters. It's sort of the same gripe that I have with, like, grenades and things, like how do you work this? What is this supposed to represent? Well, I have a shield. Well, I have something that breaks a shield. Is that all it does? If you throw this, like, some people use soccer grenades, like in other games, and it can stun people or kill people. Again, there's a bunch of various things that it can do, but if you have one of these and it's something that breaks a shield, like, why does it break a shield and not kill me? Or, like, adversely, does it kill me, but is there an area of effect? I mean, what are you trying to represent, and how are you representing it? I think is kind of a big deal with me, the way that I enjoy playing these games.
Yeah, like, when you're talking about different types of blasters, it's very easy to see what kind of trumps what.
Right.
Like, say, for example, you have a long-range sniper-type weapon where you're very accurate, you can hit from a long range, but you have a long reload. If you have a not as accurate, say, hailfire, that you can, once that shot's gone, you can run in and just unload onto them, then you have the advantage. Or if you have a small quick blaster, it's kind of a bounce between the two. You can kind of run around, hit the person with the hailfire while dodging their bullets. Like, there's kind of natural balancing that happens in that sense. With melee weapons, the balancing is kind of forced upon it, where you have to say, this has to do this to a shield. This has to be the effect that happens with it.
Right, exactly.
Or when a bullet hits a shield, this is what happens with it. Or when two melee weapons hit, the mace is always going to beat the sword. Like, you try and create this paper, rock, scissors type setup when it's not always organically going to be that way in combat. And of course, it's the same way with blasters too. I just feel like blasters kind of naturally don't need to assign effects or rules with them to avoid those complications.
Right, exactly. And I mean, also one of the things that we do in a lot of our games is we don't have a ton of... I know people play with different lives and things like that. Us is sort of when you get hit, you are out and you go back to respawn, or if it's a different game type where you're frozen or something like that, it's usually one hit takes you out. You don't have like a life meter. You don't have, I'm going to sit here and say I have this many hits left, or I have this much. It's just too complicated for running a game. And it's cool if it's just you and a few friends, in my opinion. It's cool because you can all sort of keep track of each other. There's 4 or 5 of you, and you're just running around like, I know I hit you, and Joey hit you too, but when you have 20 people coming to a game, it's like I'm not going to keep track of everybody, and there's a lot of room for people to say, oh no, I'm only on my second life, or I'm on this, and yeah, of course we're still playing by the honor system here, but the honor system, if I shoot you and you say yes or no, you got hit, and if I can call where I hit you or not, I mean, those are things that are a little bit more easily verifiable. Yeah, you could get into fights about them, but then you're just obviously being a dick. The other ones is like, well, I could be lying, but unless this one person is the one who hit me like 3 or 4 times and they know that I'm out of lives or whatever, that somebody else that shoots me is not going to know how many lives I do or don't have left. So I like to make things very visual and very like thoughtless. I don't want people to have to like, think about rules or think about this. It's just, boom, you get hit, you're done.
Anytime in the middle of the game, if you're stopping to think about what just happened, or if you're stopping to try and recognize what's going on, there's a problem.
Right, or if you're trying to figure out like what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, what's supposed to happen in this situation, then it opens itself for complications.
And we play really fast-paced games, so that's the thing. Is like it stops the flow completely almost, because it's kind of like, well, if I was capturing the flag and this happened, but this other guy over here got shot and he didn't know that this and that, and he didn't have lives and blah blah blah, he could have stopped this guy from getting them. So now, does that count? Is this a point? Who cares? We're just gonna restart, and then everybody's kind of like, well, that sucked. Like, it was fun, but at the same time, there was no clear.
Yeah, there's no clear victor, and that's what kind of messes with it. And I feel like Melee can lend itself to be a hodgepodge of those situations where you're trying to deal with something, you're trying to handle someone. It just kind of slows down the gameplay a lot. Mm-hmm. In Nerf and combat, I like to be very fast, very quick, very action-packed. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be sitting around. I don't want to be having to deal with a certain player because he has a shield. Right. It just seems like a big complication. And it's not me trying to be lazy, because I am a lazy man. I will admit to that. Any day of the week. But I'm just saying is unwelcome frustrations dealing with how balancing certain items work can be very cumbersome from running a game perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's just so many different things you have to think about when you're thinking about weapons. Because just like people make homemade blasters, and that's already something you have to deal with, is people modding blasters or modding darts. You know, that's already something you have to address almost on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
But with weapons, it's like, well, do you allow this? Well, I took this and wrapped it in foam. Are you going to allow that? Are you going to allow them to throw it? Are you going to allow this shield, that shield? Can you hit someone with this shield? Can you, like, you know?
Oh, if you could bop people with your shield.
Yeah, like, well, I covered my shield completely in foam. Can I, like, stun someone with it if I hit them, like, you know, I've seen that. Well, I hit you with the shield, and now you're stunned for 5 seconds, so now I can shoot you and kill you. Like, you know.
Or I've attached swords or I tapped the weapon on the top of my shield, so I can block you and then just lean in forward and tap you with that. Are we going to count that? Or
well, but then does that count as a weapon hit? You know.
Yeah.
There's it's not just rock paper scissors. There's like.
And we're just talking about weapon interactions here. As far as gameplay, like let's talk about the most common gameplay: capture the flag. I think everyone at their Nerf games loves playing capture the flag.
Yeah.
And there's certain problems with capture the flag when you're introducing melee weapons. For example, is the flag a melee weapon? Can you sit there and hit people when you're running past them? Because that's just
this Halo where you can that's yeah.
Or for example, a shield. Going back in the shields again,
mm-hmm.
Get 2 or 3 players to create a blockade around the flag,
yeah.
And they can sit there with blasters and just shoot at you and create this fortress around the flag that they just can't get through.
A moving fortress that you can get, you know, your flag to wherever you need it to go. No, yeah. I agree. I think it just changes the game so much. If you wanted to have really specific games, and I think, you know, we've talked about this and we played around with the idea, and so far we haven't really liked anything. We haven't come to any decisions on this sounds cool, fun, entertaining, and balanced. Where like there's one person per team who gets a specific shield that we assign them or something like that, and they have a job or they do something or they have some sort of special rules for that one person. That's one thing, but when you're just saying, hey, anybody can have whatever the heck you want, you know? If you want this, you can have it. You want a shield you want 2 shields? Cool. You can drape them on you like a protester. You know, I've got a shield on my front and I got a shield on the back. Now I'm good to go. Like at that point, you might as well start saying,
protester. The end is
nigh. You might as well just start saying you can have body armor. You know, well, I got body armor, so your Nerf darts don't hit me. I mean, where do you stop?
To be fair, I have said if someone comes up like rolled out in Master Chief armor, I kind of want to allow them to take a couple extra hits.
Yeah, but that's just because we really want pictures of a dude with Master Chief armor and Nerf guns.
That'd be cool.
That would be so awesome.
Or at some conventions, some people have gone dressed up as Bumblebee, and I'm like, you know what? Fine. Autobots can take 100 hits before they die.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I might do something like that if somebody said they were going to roll up in something specific. But if you just told everybody, hey, you can have this, you can make it out of cardboard, whatever, I don't know. I mean, in all seriousness, right, yeah. If somebody came up with real, like legit, and I'm obviously not real Master Chief armor, but something legit that wasn't like I bought this at you know Spirit. yeah, maybe, or like Iron Man armor, I might go like, yeah, all right, you know what, you can take this many hits.
So what I'm imagining when you say that is some 25-year-old dude, because clearly I understand the age demographic for Nerf. It's 25-year-olds,
like
not
us.
a range. But you know how they have the costumes for kids that are made out of like the stretchy spandex? He just shows up in that, his rolls of fat, just gushing around in the spandex, ripping at the seams.
The shirt comes like up and the belly's hanging out.
And he's got like the special Legendary Edition or the Special Edition from Halo 3 that has the way too tiny helmet.
That helmet doesn't. You can only put games in that helmet.
No, but he like ties a string onto it and ties it onto
has
his
it
hat.
on top of his
It's
head.
like a Master Chief yarmulke. And it's like, well, guys, I'm here's Master Chief.
Now I can take all the hits,
I can
guys.
take all the hits. Who wants to be my Cortana tonight?
Yeah.
I need to play 4. I hear some weird stuff happens with Cortana. See, Josh right now is dying because he's not wearing armor. But what I wanted to say is I remember my first Nerf game, actually. I actually rolled out dressed as Captain America.
Yeah.
Josh went dressed up as Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a friend go as Thor.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I was talking about Thor earlier, swinging his hammer.
And we actually had you had the shield.
I had the Captain America shield. It was a small one, about the size of a frisbee. But what was nice about that, it was so small. Literally, every time someone fired me, I could just turn a little bit and block the hits.
And this was for a friend's birthday party. This wasn't like a big Nerf game.
Yeah, it was just for fun. That's why we rolled out in costumes.
Yeah, and I had like the Wolverine claws, little tiny like plastic things.
To put this in perspective, this was not a costume party. We just went dressed
decided to come wearing costumes. They weren't even full costumes. They were really just like the cheap masks that you can get at like Toys R Us or Target, and like the cheap props that you can get there too.
Those claws were pretty sick, though.
I still have the claws. They're pretty awesome.
Yes. And I brought my Tron discs.
And you brought your Tron discs, but we ended up not using the Tron discs. What we used was the shield and the Thor hammer for Capture the Flag.
Which is an awesome idea, by the way. I highly recommend having objects for Capture the Flag. That's cool.
Yeah. We were going to actually have a whole thing where we talk about objects for Capture the Flag and props and things like that for games.
Yes.
We've graduated to using like real flags that we've made. And they're like Halo two-handed flags, but
yeah, they're pretty fun.
They're a lot of fun. They're more fun than the
Josh did all the work on it.
things.
I kind of just, like I said, I'm lazy, folks. I'll just take credit for whatever Josh does. I have no problem with that.
You know. But
welcome to Nerf.
That was, I don't even remember why we started talking about, because we rolled out in costume, we were talking about Master Chief.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
well, actually, I was talking about armor, which
Right.
led to Master Chief. But what I was thinking is, like, it'd be very easy to just get, like, very small items that will count as a melee weapon just to abuse certain factors of it. Like, if you
Right.
want to say, I can never get hit, it's like, okay, why don't I put a shield on both my arms? I mean, if it's a small Captain America one, that's just a frisbee-sized one. So basically, your arms and everything they cover normally become off-limits to hit now.
Yeah, I mean, you could do something like that again, then everybody starts going, well, cool, I'm just going to clothespin them onto my shirt. Now
Or-
I've got Madonna chest, and you can't shoot me.
The other complication with that is, if you remember the Stampede and some of the other blasters have shields actually on them.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of turns into, well, if we're counting gun hits,
Yeah.
I'm not going to use my shield on here, or if...
Why am I going to
or
make
if it
myself a
doesn't
bigger
count,
target? Yeah.
Or if you are saying gun hits don't count, then you can sit here and put a shield on Stampede, or just use a huge blaster. And I don't know how many people out there have done laser tag, but there are certain sensors on your body with laser tag that you have to connect and hit with. So you get people taking their blasters, because there's a lot of blank space on them, and using them to cover their chest and doing this weird dance where they're moving the blaster in front of them like they're blocking all the laser hits with it.
Yeah, no.
And that's what could happen with Nerf if someone's shooting and like, I'm out of ammo. Well, I'm just going to dance around and use my blaster in front of me.
Yeah,
and
I
you
mean,
can hit
especially
me.
if you're using stock streamlines or elite streamlines. I mean, sometimes you can knock those out of the air with some blasters, you know, just like, oh, they're coming at me, swat. Cool, not a problem, you know. If you're counting blaster hits, or you're not counting blaster hits, rather, I mean, and you're somebody, I've got a bunch of blasters strapped on me. I've just got jolts everywhere and all over, and I've got, you know, do those count? Is it only the blaster that you're using that doesn't count as a hit? I mean...
Yeah, and then you're talking about, like, the edge of your... Like, for example, I have a loadout that has a lot of gear that goes on. I have a holster, I have an ammo pouch, I have a little thing that holds a couple magazines. I don't know the name of it, but I saw it at an Army surplus store, so I bought it.
Right.
With those, I always consider those as hits, because, hey, it's on your body.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're having the advantage and the benefit of using all these extra gears or extra gear,
right?
I mean, there should be a downside, and the downside is you're loaded down, you're an easier target, you're easier to hit.
Right,
That's what
you might be
down
less
to.
mobile, but if you start saying like, cool, you can basically make armor out of blasters or blaster parts. I mean, at that point, does the blaster even have to work? Does it? You could, like I said, you could use jolts. You could take a bunch of just junk that you have, scrapped blasters, and be like, well, I'll just tie them to me. I could duct tape them on me. It's a blaster hit. And I mean, again, this is the extreme. People aren't going to hopefully do this at games because they're not going to be just
but
that.
An easy one that'll pop up is someone goes in with a melee weapon and they block with their gun.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of weak. Then it's like, what's the point of a melee weapon if your blaster is essentially a melee weapon?
Right.
Just run around with a long strike with the barrel on it. It's going to be a long thing you can poke people with if they're really close by. Mm-hmm. And it kind of takes away the downside of being a long-range sniper. If you're going for huge ranges, but you can just tap someone if they're nearby you, then it's kind of like, well, I have the best of both worlds. Why would I ever use a different blaster?
Right. No, I know what you're saying, for sure. It takes away from... I think from people that have spent a lot of time making homemade blasters that go really far, especially in wars like ours where we're using a lot of stock, because it does set them apart. It does give them almost a sniper role. I know a lot of people are like, there's no sniping in Nerf. Like, well, you can hit me from across the field that we play in, and we don't play in a field, but we just call it the field. We play at like a
the
school.
combat arena, if you will.
Yeah, where we play.
An elementary school.
You can hit me from your starting area into my starting area if you could actually see them from one another. You could go that far. That's basically a sniper. I mean, we just kind of call them like sniper high-powered weapons in comparison to the 75 feet that you're getting with stock blasters. Even when you ramp that up,
right?
You're getting 100. You're getting like 150, 200. It's like, wow, that's ridiculous.
Basically, you don't have to be the sniper sitting on the roof doing your little I am the sniper, the gun is my most important weapon, it is an extension of my body. It's not that type of sniping. It's basically, do you have the range to compensate for the lack of range all the other blasters have?
Right. And it's I think that's really fun in our games because usually they have less of an ammo capacity. It's less...
it naturally balances itself.
Right. The rate of fire that they have is a lot less... so people, you missed because I hid behind something and now I can like rush you. Like it makes it really fun and it sets those people apart in an almost specialty class.
Invisible hand of Nerf guiding it.
There we go.
While with Melee, it's more kind of like the visible hand. It is the master hand that is very clumsily grabbing and saying, this is what this is going to do. This is how this is going to work.
Right.
It doesn't naturally take care of itself.
Yeah. And I mean, in a situation like that where... maybe, I have a really high-powered blaster and I missed you and now you're running up on me. So I have a couple of options in a normal game. I have a sidearm, which I'm going to pull out and start trying to shoot you with because you're now within like a distance to where it's not going to be advantageous for me to try to reload, or I'm going to try to reload really quick and get another shot off at you and hit you while you're not behind any cover. And that other person who's coming up on you has to decide at what point they're going to start firing their blaster. You know, like, this is the range that I can hit you at reliably or not. With Melee, it's like, well, I've got a shield, so I'm just going to run straight at you like Captain America and forget about it. I have mobile. I have a shield. I mean,
here's what it breaks down to, Josh. I think I say that a lot. Here's what it breaks down to.
Yes.
Breaks down to.
Break
it down now. Is we're not using shields effectively. Because if you remember Captain America in the Avengers movie, he's fighting the Chitauri.
Yes.
And then Iron Man comes down and he blasts Captain America with the shield and then deflects it.
So what we're saying is we should use vortex blasters as bank shots off of shields.
Yes.
There we go. Makes sense.
Bank all the shots.
But my point being, I could run up with a shield, or even if you don't allow shields, like now it's like, well, I don't have to worry about getting close and hitting you with a blaster. I just have to get within range that I can hit you with my melee weapon. And that person who has the higher power blaster either might have a melee weapon as well, or might also have a shield. Like I might just be sitting here taking pot shots with my shield in front of me, and I mean,
all bases are covered.
Yeah, it changes the game so drastically that I can't find a way that it makes it.
To mesh these.
Yeah, just
like I'm sure if everyone had swords and shield, then you can come with a lot of rules where basically like you need to have a certain amount of hits against someone to actually count it, or you have to hit a certain area to count it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's why I just think if you're gonna do melee combat, just do melee combat. If you're gonna do Nerf with blasters, do Nerf with blasters, and if you want to have a little bit of specialty where you have somebody who has a very like a sword or a melee weapon or a shield, you put very specific rules on that person and what they can and can't do, or give them a specific task.
And use them in very specific game types. Yes,
exactly.
Because it's not going to work with capture flag. It's going to work horribly with team deathmatch.
Right. I mean, you're going to have a very specific game type for it that's set up and built around the fact that these people are going to have specific capabilities, and they are a specialty class of some sort. I mean, I agree. As far as melee... Yeah. If you like it and you enjoy playing with it, cool. More power to you. Personally, I haven't found a way that in our games or other games that it's been balanced and fun.
I would just really like some feedback on this, because the couple of games I've gone to that have allowed melee weapons, personally, I've never really dug it. I haven't seen the argument for it really, besides mentally it's very cool. But, I mean, if you can't take that application to the real world, then it's a futile effort that kind of ruins your fun instead of enhancing it.
I agree.
So if you figured out a way to have it be balanced, have it just kind of work out, where you don't have to worry about this such and such situation happening or issues arising, reach out. Let us know. I would love to hear it and talk about it in a future podcast.
Definitely. I mean, I don't want to run melee for the sake of I already bought some melee weapons and it's cool, I want to use them. Just go use the melee weapons. Go. Do it.
I want to use my hammer.
Oh.
I want to use my hammer and my shield.
Do you have a sickle?
Wait a minute. I do have a sickle. I got it for a costume years ago.
There we go.
It was fun.
Now you can be Russian.
I can be Captain Russia.
Yes.
Was there's an Iron Patriot. That's
there's like a Russian version of Captain America.
His name is Crimson Dynamo.
That's we'll call it there.
We'll just leave it there.
Okay.
I know nothing about comic books, ladies and gentlemen. I just find the cool stuff and then rip it off.
And then I just facepalm a lot when he talks about them.
Did you know Nick Fury is black?
Yeah.
And he fought in World War II in Nam in the Gulf encounter and Iraq. What fight was the Punisher in? Because that keeps changing.
It was originally Vietnam. I think it's still Vietnam, as far as I know.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't think they've changed it.
Frank Castle's kind of old.
Frank Castle is pretty old.
He has a lot of blasters.
He's got scars.
Yes.
Mentally and physically.
And
that's going to be... We need to do a Halloween game so people will dress up as the Punisher and Nick Fury and stuff for games.
And I could see allowing melee weapons for that.
Again, game types and fun. If we're just having a fun game, melee, and we just want to kind of mess around, sure. But for games where we're going to have just who knows who showing up and people may or may not know rules...
See, my plan for the costume event, I'm going to go as multiple man. So every time I get hit, it creates a duplicate of me who happens to have everything I have, and you just keep playing.
No, because then we'll have people coming as Naruto characters and then just dropping logs.
Okay, here's the thing on that, though. If they have brought enough logs for them to do the doppelganger no jitsu or whatever it is, the copycat knows something, then yes, I'll allow that. But I want to see you running around with 50 logs on your back. Each time you get hit, you drop
You
one.
have to pop smoke, too. You have to, like, smoke bomb. And you have to pop smoke and drop a log. Oh, this is fucked.
Josh, here's what it breaks down to. If we have smoke we can just deploy whenever we want, then we need to use that in every game.
The cops are going to show up and haul us away. That's what's going to happen.
What's going on? Shadow Clone New Jitsu.
Once again, we have stopped talking about Nerf.
Ganbate Daio.
Yes.
There are Japanese people who are so mad at me for messing that up.
They didn't just unsubscribe. They're actively looking up your address so they can mail you death threats in Japanese.
That's the easier way to do that.
Is with a death note.
I
stole it from you.
You take my jokes. You're lucky I don't have a death note.
Yeah. They need to update that. They need to make it a death tablet. Like a death nook.
We could write it. We could do it.
We'd have to get the rights for Nook or a death Kindle. Those are better.
Burn in the Kindle fires of hell. It writes itself.
There you go.
That's what we got to do. It's kind of like how
a Tron spinoff.
Yes.
There's programs.
Dude, there's fanfic right now of this. I will guarantee it. That someone has taken Tron and Death Note and merged them together in this magical combination of technology and people with Justin Bieber haircuts.
You're breaking the internet right now. There are people that'll listen to this and be like, I have to either find this or write it now because there's rules to this, Shawn. There's rules.
We have to get on the Raito cycle.
So you think you just started one thing, but now there's somebody like, well, I have to Rule 34. Rules. There's too many. Now they all have to be women.
My goal is basically I want someone breaking down, listening to our podcast, like chain smoking cigarettes. Like I need to write this, but how? How do I reach these characters and merge them together? And the short answer is Kingdom Hearts.
And the long answer is Nerf.
Does Disney own any Japanese studios? Miyazaki. He works with Disney.
No, they just distribute all of his stuff in America, don't they?
It's close enough.
They're just like, you made a really good movie and we'd like to play it and slap our name on it. It's like when Quentin Tarantino presents a movie he didn't actually direct.
But I feel like the studio rights... Well, okay, the cat from My Neighbor Totoro was in Toy Story 3.
Yeah, and Sonic was in Wreck-It Ralph.
So that means now Disney owns Sega.
Anything they touch. That's how it goes.
We
had an Indiana Jones ride. It took us this long, but we bought Indiana Jones.
It's the long game.
That's right.
And realistically, Sega, they're doing better.
You know.
But, I mean, if Disney bought them, just imagine you can have Yoda and Sonic the Hedgehog in your next Kingdom Hearts game.
Oh, it hurts.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah.
Remember that scene in episode 1 where the Jedis run away really, really fast? It's right at the beginning where like they're getting blasted and they're like, zoom! And you never see them run that fast again. Like there's a blurring effect.
This is why you don't have melee in Nerf games, because lightsabers.
Okay, lightsabers would actually be kind of fun though, because they're small, compact, you can whip it out. And you'd have to have specific rules about them. Like, we're having a duel. The first person to bust their lightsaber loses. It would be expensive, but tell me that would not be exciting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. We'll just...
Interesting?
I'll leave it at that. Because some people are going to show up with the Force FX lightsabers and break all the other ones. Like the big...
I have no tone. And on that note... On that note, I think we're just going to call it.
I think we're good here. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for joining us at Nerfcast again. This is Shawn and Josh signing off, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Happy nerfing.
With lightsabers.